Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Norwich Talk. Norwich City have just beaten Brentford 1-0. My legs feel a little bit like jelly right now. I really don't know why I was so nervous towards the end of that game, but I'm sure we all were, to be honest with you. That was very tense, but a massive win for Norwich. 1-0, of course, as I just said, and oh wow, it feels really good to have won that game. I'm not going to lie to you. Before the game, I tried to sort of downplay it in my head, and I tried to say that even if Norwich City weren't to win, or even if we were to lose, it wouldn't be too devastating because of this sort of gap we'd built over the last few weeks, whilst Brentford sort of dropped points. But when it came to sort of the crunch time and the start of the game, in my head I was very nervous about it, and I think that's only human, really, isn't it? But yeah, you look at the lineup; it was unchanged from Wickham. I'm not very surprised. I was really excited to see Onel Hernandez get another go, because the way he's going to get back to full fitness is by constantly playing. Sadly for him, he wasn't particularly great, didn't have much to do, to be honest with you. But it was really interesting. I know everyone kept saying this on Twitter. I know Hodgie did, of course, in terms of like tactical setups. And I think that was a slightly different Norwich to what we've seen in the past few weeks. And I'd say it's bold, but I think that's a little bit sort of too extreme to say. But it was certainly different from Daniel Farke, in the fact that I think we sort of set up specifically for Brentford, in that we wanted to look a little bit more comfortable off the ball, whereas in the past few games, obviously we've been playing sort of weaker opposition. With all due respect, I think they're towards the bottom end of the table, aren't they? So you want to sort of put yourself onto those games you want to attack. Whereas in this game, I think Daniel Farke was very aware of the sort of offensive threat that Brentford possessed. There's no hiding from it. They've scored the most goals in the league this season, haven't they? And it ended up being a very smart decision, a very clever one at that. The thing that I noticed early on was, as soon as either team sort of got in between the defence in midfield, they looked a bit shaky. The opposition would look a bit shaky on the back foot. And Emi Buendia operated really well in that space for his goal. His goal was just ridiculous, wasn't it? That's sort of what you expect from Buendia at that point. And obviously, someone mentioned it on the comms. It might have been Don Goodman, or the actual commentator pointed out the run that I think Mario Vrancic made that just sort of split the defence. And you can see that defenders are scared of Emi Buendia, if I can get my words out properly. You can see that they fear going in for a tackle, because they know he's just going to sort of put them on the backside, because with the ball at his feet, he's the best in the league, and I don't think you can really hide from that, especially considering this goal that he scored. And he put it onto his left, and I've been saying this since I mentioned it in a podcast with Hodgie. Must have been June last season, which seems weird to say. Obviously, post-lockdown, we were talking about whether Daniel Farke should be sacked in that podcast specifically, but I remember we talked about Buendia as well, and I mentioned his left foot being really underappreciated, and that goal really shows how sort of effective he is with it. And it was really good. It was kind of weird in the context of the game, to be honest with you, because I didn't really... And now, this isn't a criticism by any means at all, but I didn't really feel like Norwich City were going to score. It seemed like a fairly even game. I thought Brentford had a little bit more of the ball, didn't they? Or it felt like they did anyway. I've not looked at the stats. But the goal was, again, it was just ridiculous. And without any Buendia, you don't score that goal. And, the guy, he just makes the difference, doesn't he? He is just an absolute joy to watch. And I was speaking to my friend during the game. I think we're both kind of disappointed that potentially we might not see him next season, but for some reason I'm quietly optimistic that he'll stay. But I want to speak about that in a podcast, which me, Sam and Alf will be going live with before the next game, I'd imagine. So I'll save that point for then. But for the rest of the first half, we look quite comfortable, and that's a surprise to me, in that I'm not surprised in terms of this Norwich City team being quite comfortable on the ball. I'm just quite surprised that in a game as big as that, I felt comfortable watching it. I never really thought Norwich were going to concede, to be quite honest with you, bar that chance that Sergi Canos should have scored. Really should have scored that. We can't overlook that, can we? He really should have put that into the goal. Pardon me. But yeah, other than that, I thought Norwich were pretty good. And then at the very death, I think it might have been 46th minute, 47th minute, Tim Pukki has to score. Thankfully, now we've won the game, we don't have to be too upset about it. But I was furious at the time, and I'm not sort of criticising Pukki as a player, but in that moment specifically, he sort of screwed himself over a bit with his touch. I think it was Jensen behind him, and his touch took him to his right, which is away from the goal, when I really just thought, just knock it central, because you're quicker than him, you're ahead of him, and just go and score. But he wasn't, it wasn't to be really for him tonight, was it? I think as well at half-time it said he had the second least amount of touches in the half, so perhaps that's why he wasn't as sort of warm to the game, if you know what I mean. I think that makes sense. But yeah, I think he tried to dink the keeper as well, and Raya, again, who's a really good shot stopper, just sort of stayed on his feet, and it was really clever goalkeeping from him. But at half-time, as I said, I was really comfortable watching the game for as sort of far forward as I was lent towards the TV. I didn't think Brentford were going to score. And what I thought we would see from Norwich is a bit more sort of attacking prowess in the second half, a bit like Wickham, where we were a little bit slow in the first half, but in the second half we'd come out sort of playing a quicker, a higher tempo, I suppose, if you will. But no, that wasn't the case, and again, it was just sort of a copy and paste job in that we just looked comfortable, and that's a positive. I thought Mario Vrancic was pretty decent tonight with his sort of creation. He looked really, he looked just decent on the ball. I feel like I'm the only one who's gonna say that tonight in terms of a video perspective. I haven't seen anything said about him on Twitter, but I thought he looked okay, to be honest with you. But yeah, the second half, I can't really sort of isolate too many other highlights, other than I really wanted Norwich to just sort of get on to Ethan Pinnock, because he was really struggling with his passes. There must have been 4 or 5 of them that he just sent wayward, and I really wanted Norwich to sort of take advantage of that, but we didn't. However, that said, Norwich won the game, didn't they? And I'm going to regret this when I upload the video, because I'm sure I'll remember some other chances, but I think that's just about everything for the game. And you look at this game from sort of a wider point of view, it's a real statement of intent from Norwich. That was a Norwich City who weren't sort of the best looking they've been, but we were just comfortable, and that's what I take away from that game. And I think that's the main difference between this Norwich City team and the team that won the league in 2018-2019. We just look comfortable off the ball, and there's never really sort of that feeling that Norwich are going to concede all the time. You look at games in that season, we'd win 4-3, 3-2. You look at a game like today, we're playing the team who've scored the most goals in the league. You've got Ivan Toney, who's on, 24 plus goals. I'm not actually sure off the top of my head, but we never looked like conceding. I don't think Brentford had a shot on target in the second half. Obviously, there was that sort of minor heart attack I had, and I'm sure you did as well, at the end of the second half, when the ball came in from Pinnock. Again, it was kind of ironic considering I pointed him out as a sort of weaker player in that game. But I don't know who put the ball back in. There was the header. I think it was Marcus Force, I think his name is, and he put the header back in. Sorensen clears it off the line, but it was given for a foul, which was an interesting decision. But, Sorensen cleared it nonetheless, and it's such a big win for Norwich, and it's such a relief. And the last thing I'm going to say was it was really weird to play at 5:30 on a Wednesday. That felt very weird. Now, I know the days, since March last year have felt weird because of lockdown, but tonight was just weird. That's not really a complaint, but I'm sure you know what I mean. Wednesdays at 5:30, I don't fancy that one again. I'm also just sort of realising how red I look in the camera, which sort of sums up how I was feeling towards the end of that game. It was sort of a weird feeling. It was like a fatigue in my legs, as I think everything in my body was just trying to stop me from fainting. But now I can, as I'm sure you can as well, just sort of enjoy the rest of your evening. Norwich City 10 points clear of Brentford, and it is mad to think that if I'd have said to you before, I think it was, or just after the Middlesbrough game where Buendia had been sent off and that sort of blip occurred, if I'd have said to you we'd be 10 points clear of Brentford having just beaten them, I think you would have just looked at me and laughed. And I would have done the same if you'd have said it to me. But we're not in that sort of position. Norwich City have been fantastic in terms of their resilience this season. It's really worth pointing that out, and the football is. And do you know what? I was going to say it's not as free-flowing. I think it is. It's just the chance creation, or the chance finishing, hasn't been particularly great. But this Norwich City team looks so much better, in my opinion, for the right reasons. Can you look better for the wrong reasons? I don't know. But they look so much better than they do. A lot more sort of secure. Secure is the right word. I'm sure I'll come up with a better word at a later date. But it's really promising stuff. And there was all this talk on the comms, wasn't there, about sort of crowning Norwich champions now. No, let's not do that. Let's enjoy sort of the run-in, and whoever we've got next, I haven't got a clue. All the information is just leaving my head at this point, to be honest with you. I need to sit down. But yeah, a massive 3 points for Norwich, and a convincing performance. We look comfortable in my eyes. I'm very keen to know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below, how you thought we played, who was your man of the match. And I think that's just about everything for this video. So if you could give it a little thumbs up, that would be greatly appreciated. If you're enjoying these videos, make sure to subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. If you don't want to, fair enough. So hopefully I'll see you again very soon.